would like to call this meeting of the Macomb Township Board of Trustees to order. We'll now say the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Posey, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Trustee Kuzmano?
Here.
Trustee Lucido?
Here.
Trustee Oliver?
Here.
Trustee Nevers?
Present.
Treasurer Drollet?
Here.
Clerk Posey here. Supervisor Viviano?
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Moving on to approval of the agenda, are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? There's a motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Clerk Posey, to approve the agenda as presented. Members, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to approval of the bills. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on the bill run?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions regarding the overpayments by taxpayers. I was wondering if someone could walk through, for the benefit of this trustee and also any residents who happen to look at the bill run, how an overpayment is made and how it, specifically the vendors are CoreLogic, Corvius Mortgage, and Loretta LLC. CoreLogic is almost $253,000, and if I did know how that occurred, I've forgotten, and I want a refresher on how it occurs, and because no one voluntarily or deliberately makes an overpayment, and I'd like an explanation.
Would be Stacy for
Stacy?
finance, I imagine.
Wonderful Stacy, the oracle of facts and knowledge.
So in that instance, when they receive, most of those are mortgage companies, when Treasury receives payments from the mortgage companies and they've identified that the payments have already been made, usually by the homeowner or another mortgage company, they send refunds back to the second payer. So like CoreLogic, they probably sent in 3 times as many payments, and when they went to process them, found that the ones on this bill run had already been paid, so they're paying them back.
So just to illustrate that, if I may, we take the payment for the first person who pays that taxes.
Yeah.
Sometimes a resident will come in and pay their taxes, and then their mortgage company will also pay it from their, from their account, and then we refund the second payer. We don't accept double payments, obviously, on the taxes.
So it's refunded because of a duplicate payment or
Okay.
payments.
And is it perpetual? I mean, is this?
Yes, it is perpetual.
I mean,
Consistent.
isn't there a
Constant.
database or a way of avoiding us having to actually do the work of crediting the account and then issuing refunds?
You can think of a way, I'm all ears. I mean, when we get people sending multiple payments,
Correct.
99.9% of the time that doesn't happen. It's the small percent of the time, sometimes a senior or somebody in general doesn't always know. They get even though it says this is not a bill, for people who it's being paid out of their mortgage account, sometimes they come in and pay.
Isn't it true that if we receive a check in the mail, we have to cash it, right? We can't send it back.
I think they can send it back as long as the payment
catch
is
it.
only like for one parcel, but usually these mortgage companies have many more, so we can't, with just one check. So we'd have to send
We have to,
So
the
CoreLogic might
entire
be
payment
paying
back.
for dozens and dozens of
Right,
parcels on the same check.
yep, on one check.
And
So if
we
we sent it back,
refund-
nobody's would get credited then.
then we refunded the portion back that was the duplicate
Correct.
payments.
All right, Mr. Chairman, one more question for Stacy since she's at the mic. The Plant Moran has a payment for $44,750. Is that within the amount that was approved by the board?
Yes, that's just the initial payment. The entire amount for this year is, I believe, $69,000. So
Okay.
that's just a progress payment. and we won't finish paying them until they're done and you guys receive your final report from them.
All right, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any more discussion on the bill run? Yeah, hearing none, we have a motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Nevers, to approve the bill run. Members, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Approval of the previous meeting's minutes from September 22nd, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, there's a motion by Trustee Nevers, supported by Trustee Kuzmano, to approve the previous meeting's minutes. Members, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. All right, moving on to public comments. If anyone in the audience wishes to participate, please approach the microphone. Please remember you have a 3-minute time limit, and please state your name and address for the record. Anybody who's participating remotely, please digitally raise your hand and you will be called upon. Seeing that there's nobody present who wishes to speak, Mr. Ivanowski, is there anybody digitally wishes to speak?
No, sir, not at this time.
All right, thank you. We'll move on. On to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move the consent agenda in its entirety.
Second.
Any discussion on the consent items?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for item 8A, the clerk's office. I noticed that the write-up indicated that the academy provides Michigan clerks with training tools and strategies to use while administering the continuously changing election processes. I noticed that the speakers at this particular conference, though, are not addressing election issues. Is that, I'm voting for this, by the way, because I believe an educated elected official and trustee is an asset to the municipality that they serve. I would just ask that the clerk, if possible, because one of the things is legal updates focus on marijuana laws, and also December 2nd, emotional intelligence and conflict resolution. But I didn't notice anything for elections. Is that accurate?
Actually, on Tuesday, November 30th, the clerk-to-clerk discussion,
Yes.
that's where that we address generally most of our election experiences, ways to people's different clerks' processes and improvements for efficiency.
Okay, great. That's always a good forum to learn more. I know as a trustee at the college, that's where I used to go travel all around the country at least once a year, and you see how other people handle their situations.
It's extremely
So,
helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Kuzmano. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Clerk Posey, to approve the consent agenda. Members, please vote. The motion passes unanimously. All right, at this time, we are going to have a public hearing. There is a request to adopt a street lighting SAD and an amended resolution for the Rivers Sub number 1 and 2. So at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak, please approach the microphone to the right and please state your name and address. The time is 6:39. Anybody who wishes to participate digitally in this public hearing, please raise your hand. We have a gentleman. Could you please approach the microphone here, sir? And could you please state your name and address for the record?
Robert Rader, 16123 Thames Lane, in the Rivers subdivision. Okay, this thing about the street lighting, and they want to have, it says in here, establishment of street lighting district for the purpose of clarifying special assessment for installation and maintenance of street lighting for Rivers 1 and 2. Now, when I look for a home and property in those, in 1 and 2, the street lighting was offered by the developer and all the builders as part of the package of when you bought your home or your lot. So, you know, establishing it, it was already in, you know, when they made their amendment in December, all that lighting was already installed. So why would there be a special assessment to install it? Because I'm sure that the developer passed that cost on to the builders and anybody that bought a lot. So what is the assessment for?
So I'm going to get you that explanation as soon as we close this public hearing, but this is an amendment to the SAD that already exists. So it's not something that's new, and I know my engineer is going to explain it a lot better than I will, and he's going to get you the answer that you're looking for.
And the other thing, on my taxes starting in 2020, there's a charge on your winter taxes for street lighting that I've paid since 2020 until present for, you know, maintenance of the lighting.
That's correct, and this is the exact same.
Okay, I mean, if
SAD.
you're gonna explain it, you know, I'll wait for the explanation, but, you know, the thing I'm getting at is this wasn't installed afterwards. This was
Correct.
already installed by the developer way before they even passed anything.
That is exactly correct, yes.
Okay, that's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. Is there any more public comment? Okay, at this time, we're going to close the public hearing. Time is 6:42. I guess I should note I should have had Jim do an explanation before I started the public hearing, but Jim, if you could?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members. Essentially, what we're doing here is we're correcting the SAD resolution that was done when this development was constructed. The gentleman's right, the streetlights were paid for by the developers and were installed with the development as they are with our subdivisions. The board has seen many of those resolutions. So as part of an audit that we're doing, we found some errors in the SADs for this particular subdivision. We worked with the township attorney trying to come up with some language that would correct those errors that we had found. What you have before you tonight is that resolution. I know that there's language in there that talks about construction, but that's just to complete the overall picture and include all the fees and everything that DTE had charged back when it was constructed. This will not change any of the rates. The rate that you're currently paying is the rate that you'll pay going forward, although as part of the audit, we're looking at those costs and they may change at some point in the future, but not as a result of this resolution that the board is considering tonight. So be happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Van Tiffelen. So just to reiterate so that, you know, he's a lot smarter than we are, so I'm going to explain it in layman's terms. The assessment that you are currently paying is not going to change, and there will not be a different assessment. That's the only assessment you are going to pay for your street lighting.
And that assessment pays for the electricity to run and maintain the streetlights, not to build or install the streetlights, essentially, correct?
That is correct. It's for the electricity and the maintenance of the lights. So if a light goes out or if a pole gets hit by a car, DTE goes out and replaces the equipment and gets it back into working order.
Essentially, every new subdivision being built in the township has a requirement for streetlights, and there's a SAD, a special assessment district, created for each of those subdivisions, and that assessment pays for the maintenance and electricity for those streetlights. So that's what that assessment essentially is paying for.
Yes.
Okay. Sir, did we answer your question for you adequately?
in other words, you're not looking for any additional assessment
Correct.
for putting in the lighting or anything, it's just,
This is a,
you know, that fee that they charge on the taxes is, you know, for the electricity and the maintenance.
That's correct.
I understand that. It just sounds like when you read it, like they're gonna add on
Right.
another
I
assessment.
perfectly
for
understand.
lighting. Is
There won't
that-
be any new assessment.
Pardon?
No new assessment. It'll be,
Okay.
No new
Okay,
taxes.
that's the only thing I was concerned about.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions. I noticed that this has come up repeatedly. Is there ever been a report generated on who or what professionals were involved that resulted in these mistakes and errors that we're correcting now? Would it have been the township attorney at the time?
Typically, the way it had been done in the past and the way these particular resolutions were done is they were prepared by the clerk's office and working with DTE for the costs. So they were done internally. Engineering took this over a few years back, and as part of us looking at what cost the township incurs from DTE versus what we're charging the residents, we felt it necessary to perform this audit that discovered these issues. And, you know, the Rivers is a subdivision that dates back probably 20, 25 years. So these resolutions have been around. The township is charged according to what DTE is charging, so the charges have been correct. We've verified that. It's just that we need to clean up this particular resolution so that it's very clear as to what parcels are in the district, what parcels are not in the district, and what the fees are based on.
Mr. Chairman, now some time ago, I was involved in a meeting via Zoom to discuss this, and for purposes of truth in advertising and full disclosure, there was discussion that perhaps the subdivisions were paying a static rate that had been raised over the years by DT Energy, so the board is not precluding itself from raising the rates slightly to reimburse itself. Is that correct, or?
That is
what I heard?
correct. For a long time, the townships never adjusted rates based on what DTE actually sends us a bill for. They were kept the same, so that is something that will have to be visited at some point.
So that there is a possibility that the rates could be increased slightly, but it's not anticipated to be any major increases.
No, I wouldn't anticipate so.
And I have a question for legal counsel through the chair. Was there any problem with the legal authority to collect, from Macomb Township to collect from Phase 2? And is that part of the reason for the amendment?
The amendment's just to clean it up essentially, but there's no concern about the legal authority to collect. It's a scrivener's error essentially, and Mr. Aloya researched the issue thoroughly and did provide a written memorandum to that effect. I did have an opportunity to review it, and I concur with his conclusion on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Kuzmano. So if there's no more discussion at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt the street lighting SAD amended resolution for the River subdivision, numbers 1 and 2.
So moved.
Support.
Who got the support?
Charlie.
Charlie? Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion by Clerk Posey, supported by Trustee Oliver.
Mr. Chairman, one last comment, not discussion. This is all controlled by the Michigan Public Service Commission, from my understanding from the discussions with DT Energy's representative at that meeting that I mentioned earlier. So we're not really in a position to do anything except pass along those charges unless the township wants to subsidize and pay for pay for it globally across the board for the township subdivisions. That's all the comments I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kuzmano. So we have a motion by Clerk Posey, supported by Trustee Oliver, to adopt the street lighting SAD amended resolution for the River subdivisions numbers 1 and 2. Clerk Posey, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Supervisor Clerk Posey, yes. Trustee Oliver?
Yes.
Trustee Kuzmano?
Yes.
Trustee Lucido?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Treasurer Drollet?
Yes.
Supervisor Viviano?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted.
Isn't that my line?
Yes, I just kept going.
Thanks. Thanks for the help.
Anytime.
Moving on to item 11. We have a request to amend the Code of Ordinances for Macomb Township, Section 17-132, Land Division Ordinance.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Support.
Mr. Box?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. As you mentioned, this is with regards to Section 17-132 of the Code of Ordinances. So this revision deals with the process that we go through for site plans, for site condos. Largely, it's just kind of cleaning up the process. We found in review some unnecessary steps that were being taken that often cause time delays, and so we're cleaning that up. Changing some of that language around to make it more efficient. And then we are also changing, we've noticed in the last year, a number of developers, from the time they get their site condo approved, site plans, they have 1 year to begin construction. And with a number of different steps from that point until they get a shovel in the ground, we're finding 1 year is often not enough, so they're coming back in front of Planning Commission and the board itself to seek an extension. So taking that into consideration, we're actually proposing in this language to extend that to a 2-year approval from the time they get their initial plan approved.
Thank you, Mr. Box. And for the sake of clarity, a site condo, for those who may not be familiar with the term, is effectively the same as a traditional subdivision. There is a slightly different procedure, and what we did was propose that the steps are now the same as what a traditional condo, what we all understand to be a condominium complex, would go through if they came in for approval. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Mr.
Chairman?
Yep.
I would just like to take a moment to express my appreciation for our engineering and planning departments for proactively coming up with a streamlined solution that'll reduce some of the bureaucratic steps and some of the inefficiencies in the process, and proposing I guess you could say, more modern, efficient, and less time-consuming manner to achieve our same end goals. And I just think it's very much appreciated that our departments are working to suggest these ideas and come forward with solutions that I think make us look good. But it really is the engineering and planning department and the folks in those departments that came up with this idea and suggested it when, we've been struggling with how we could address this issue of concern, that there was a lot of concerns about our time delays and the details of the process not making sense anymore. And instead of us having to beat our heads against the wall, our department's planning, engineering, put their heads together and came up with an excellent solution that I think is going to be a benefit to everybody involved in the process, from the township to the taxpayers to the people who are investing in the community. So I wanted to thank them, their departments, publicly for the great work they did helping with this and essentially guiding this. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Treasurer Dillett. Any more discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion by, I got the wrong line. Motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Oliver, to amend the Code of Ordinances for the Township of Macomb, Section 17-132, Land Division Ordinance. Members, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Item 12, we have a request to approve a rezoning from residential one-family to residential one-family urban, located in parts of Section 12, 13, 23, 24, and 26 in Macomb Township. Is there a motion?
So move.
Support.
Mr. Box?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. The next two items are very similar, and you saw this at your last board meeting. The township is taking the step of removing the R1S zoning category from the map. We found a discrepancy essentially between the code, the zoning code, and the future land use map, and to avoid putting ourselves in a spot where we could face some legal challenges in discussion with other departments as well as legal, we decided that the removal of R1S was the best and safest approach. And so we're doing this in 6 phases. The first 4 phases are all R1S to R1 rezonings. You guys have already approved phase 1. Typically, there would only be one planning commission meeting in between board meetings, but the way the calendar fell this time, there were actually 2, which is why you see 2 different items. So this is actually phase 2 and phase 3 this evening, rezoning from R1S to R1. As we mentioned last time in front of the board, this change doesn't affect anybody's taxes. It doesn't affect the way they're living right now. Everything can go on as is.
Thank you, Mr. Box. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I just got one. On this item, I have a conflict and I will be abstaining.
Thank you, Trustee Oliver.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I was reading the memorandum regarding this matter dated September 13, 2021, and at the very bottom it states, the primary changes that will result from this rezoning are an overall reduction in the minimum lot area per dwelling unit and street frontage required to build a home. That was correct when the memo was drafted. Is that still true today?
Yeah, I would say that's for the most part the only change that any resident would see.
So on the undeveloped property, would it be consistent that more homes would be able to be placed in the same area before the reduction in the minimum lot area?
From before as compared to what we're proposing here? Yes, depending on the size and shape of the lot. Many of the lots that are in this R1S category tend to be long, narrow lots. So even though the density, which is based on per acre, might indicate that you could get more lots there, if they don't actually have enough road frontage, they still can't get any more lots there.
Mr. Chairman, I voted no on the original. I think that our road infrastructure is already being taxed and that we should not be giving developers on the undeveloped land more opportunity to place more homes and more families in these homes, given the fact of the traffic congestion as it already exists. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Kuzma. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Lucido, to approve the rezoning from R1S to R1, located in parts of Section 12, 13, 23, 24, and Section 26 of Macomb Township. Members, please vote. That motion carries 5-1 with Trustee Kuzmano voting no and Trustee Oliver abstaining. Moving on to item 13, which is the second item Mr. Box just referred to, is a request to approve a rezoning for residential one-family suburban to residential one-family urban, located in parts of Section 2, 4, 6, and 18 of Macomb Township. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support. Mr. Box, anything further to add to this one?
No, not really. It's the same item that we just talked about. This is phase 3 now that we're looking at, so some different section numbers, but it's the same situation.
Okay. Any further comment or discussion on this item? Okay, we have a motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Oliver, to approve the rezoning from R1S to R1, located in parts of sections 2, 4, 6, and 18 in Macomb Township. Members, please vote. That motion carries 6-1 with trustee Kuzmano voting no. Moving on to item 14, we have a request to approve a planned unit development, general design plan for Matic, permanent parcels numbers 0836 35333, 0836 353023, 0836 353030, and 0836 353018, which is property located on the north side of Hall Road, east of North Avenue. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Box?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. This planned unit development is near the corner of North Avenue and Hall Road. What you're approving tonight would be a planned unit development agreement as well as the general design plan for the property. This is a very difficult piece of property to develop. It has many parts that kind of sit behind existing commercial buildings. It has some very small, skinny pieces that kind of jut out on Hall Road, and it fronts both Hall and North Avenue, surrounding another business. So it was very difficult from the very beginning, and I think the landowners had the right idea by putting together their pieces, many of which are odd-shaped due to the widening of Hall Road a number of years ago, and working with some adjacent landowners. As you see the Matic name here, the Matic dealership is a little to the east of this, and they are associated with the development moving forward. So they are looking at a car wash on Hall Road, as well as some other options in the future for commercial or office uses, as well as some parking expansion areas for the dealership itself. This did go back, as I mentioned, this is a very difficult piece of property. As you know, Mr. Supervisor, we went back and forth many times with the developer and the petitioner, and I think we got to a spot where finally everybody is in agreement. We like what we're working with here, and Planning Commission did approve this, I believe, by unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Box. Any questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none. We have a motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Nevers, to approve the PUD for permanent parcels 0836 353 033, 0836 353 023, 0836 353 030, and 0836 353-018. Members, please vote. That motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 15 is a request to authorize the township planner to distribute a draft township master plan. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Box?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. As you all know, we've been working on the master plan for almost a year at this point. We've had a number of public Zoom meetings last fall. We spent a lot of the spring ironing out some of the details, working with internal departments, kind of brainstorming what we want the development of the township to look like. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago over at the Recreation Center, where we had well over 100 people attend, giving us their feedback. At this time, we feel that the draft document is 85–90% complete. We'll still be making some revisions based on the comments we received. We do still have a survey that's available online, but at this point, we're seeking authorization to distribute. The state of Michigan requires us to distribute this draft plan to all of our neighboring communities, as well as utility companies, railroad companies, the county, places like that, SEMCOG and others, and they have a 63-day period where they can provide comments back on this plan. And so our plan is to address some of the comments we received at the open house during that 63-day period, but we do want to keep moving this forward, so we want to at least start that 63-day period, and we feel at this time the plan is in good enough to shape to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Box. Do the residents have any further opportunity to comment on the master plan as presented?
So the survey is still available. There's a link on the township website as well as cultivatemacomb.com. And then once the 63-day period is over, when we make all the revisions that we feel necessary from the neighboring communities and others, as well as the revisions from the survey itself, we will have another public hearing at the Planning Commission level where they can come back and provide some final comment.
Thank you, Mr. Box. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion by Clerk Posey, supported by Treasurer Gillette, to authorize the township planner to distribute the draft master plan. Members, please vote.
We have a technical difficulty on.
That's okay, you can voice vote, Nancy,
Okay.
and then Ed can put it in for you.
Yes. Thank you.
Was that your vote?
Still gonna need-
Yes, that was her vote. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 16, we have a request to award the cloud-based phone system contract. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
At this time, I'm going to ask Janet Solomon, our purchasing specialist, to walk us through the process by which we arrived at our recommendation.
So we identified a need for an upgrade to our existing phone system, and on August 4th, we issued an RFP to look into the cloud-based phone system, and actually that was on July 17th with a bid due date of August 4th, and we actually received 23 bids on that project, and from the 23, we narrowed it down and we interviewed, I think, 4 companies. And from the 4, we took the best overall solution for the township. And then, were you going to do the background, or do you want me to do the background on that?
Go ahead and just take us through the whole process real quick, and then I'll get into some reasons why we're choosing this option.
Okay. So the township's on-premise phone system is beyond its expected service of life and is no longer supported by the manufacturer. Since the software and hardware comprising the phone system is no longer supported, maintaining the system is no longer an option. As part of our 5-year capital improvement plan, our IT department has identified the phone system currently being used by all the buildings and departments as an area of critical need of replacement. To replace the current phone system with a new on-premise server would cost in excess of $200,000, still need annual maintenance and updates, and would become obsolete in 7 years. With a cloud-based phone system, all maintenance costs and updates are performed by service provider at no additional cost to the township. Therefore, we identified the cloud-based phone system as the most cost-effective solution to meet our current needs. And as I said, on July 17th, we issued a request for proposals for our cloud-based phone system and received 23 bids on August 4th. Our evaluation committee consisted of 4 members who independently reviewed and scored proposals, and we did conduct 4 oral interviews with 4 different companies. Upon completion of the oral interviews and proposal scoring, the committee is recommending an award to BSB Communications for the cloud-based communication services.
Thank you, Ms. Solomon. So just to reiterate, parts of what Ms. Solomon just went through, having a physical computer running our phone system is what we have now. The cost to replace that is very high, runs into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And while that gets spread out over the life of that system, these systems tend to age very quickly. Moving to a cloud-based system allows us to remove all of the equipment from Town Hall, put everything in the cloud where there is no ongoing maintenance. We just pay a static subscription fee. The costs are much more projectionable, if that's a word. So we can very efficiently organize our budgets around it. It's actually a much better system. It also makes us a little bit more mobile, which we just learned going through the pandemic that we need to be in case something were to happen, meaning that these phones, since the server itself is out in the cloud, can be picked up, taken to one of the employee can take their phone home with them, plug it into their router, and it's just like they're sitting at their desk. So overall, it's a much more modern, efficient system, and it should be more cost-effective in the long run. Any questions?
I got a question, Mr. Supervisor. So the total fee is how much to set this up?
I have to refresh my memory. Back. Janet, do you have that handy?
Is it the 7650?
There is a one-time setup fee. And then.
So, yeah, there is a one-time setup fee, and I think that's around $7,000, but we believe that we can get that lower because part of that setup fee, including unboxing and doing the easy installation of the phones, which, we can handle on our own. So we are going to look at ways to reduce the cost even as quoted.
Right.
By doing certain aspects of it ourselves. And then we also have the monthly fee. So there's different fees involved with this, the monthly recurring fee. And that we have a projected rate based on how the bids came in. We asked all the bidders to quote a specific scenario with a certain level of service. Different employees may find that they require more or less functionality in their phones, so that monthly service fee could be slightly different based on the needs of each individual employee, which we have to survey and establish.
Okay. One other question. Is that just gonna service this building or how far?
All
out?
buildings.
Everything?
Yep.
Fire,
Yep.
new library?
We don't own the library.
Oh, that's right, take that back. All right, that saves some money there.
Yep.
Okay, so that'll take care of all of us here.
Yep. Every phone that is currently paid for by the township will become part of this cloud-based phone system.
All our cell phones, everything.
Not cell phones.
Not cell phones.
Desktop phones.
Okay, just hardwired
Correct.
equipment. Okay, thank you.
Trustee
That's it.
Guzmano, did you have a question as well?
Not on the tip of my tongue, but I was just musing in my mind. What happens if their server crashes or if there's any issues? What guarantees do we have of continuity of service?
Well, I think I believe their uptime rate was something like 99.9 something percent as their historical uptime rate, which meaning their downtime for their customers, and this is a fairly well-established provider, they're almost never down. And if they are down, it's probably because our internal internet service is down, not because of their.
We actually do have the backup internet service through, I think, the Water and Sewer Department. So if the township, if the town hall internet goes down, we do have backup service.
So one of the benefits of a cloud-based system, that if we do go down, it's not as if the phone calls go nowhere. All of the voicemails and everything else is still out in the cloud. So it means if you call town hall, you'll at least get a voicemail, and then we won't lose contact with the residents trying to call us. We'll just have to call them back for that hopefully brief moment that the system was down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more questions? All right, hearing none. We have a motion by trustee Oliver, supported by trustee Lucido, to award the cloud-based phone system contract to BSB Communications. Members, please vote. That motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 17. We have a resolution to amend the Macomb Township Building Authority's Articles of Incorporation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support? Mr. Tomlinson, I'm going to ask you to explain this one for us.
I'd be happy to. Mr. Supervisor and Board, during the course of a review of the building authority's duties and functions, when we were looking at some modifications to be done to Town Hall, it became apparent that the building authority was established some time ago, and in the course of adopting those articles of incorporation, in lieu thereof of appointing or having an appointing mechanism in place, the appointment was automatic based upon certain positions within the township. And those positions were the finance director, parks and rec director, and the deputy clerk. When we reviewed the statute dealing with building authorities, it was clear that it provided for specific term of office for those authority members. Of course, that raises somewhat of an inherent conflict because if it's based on position, the same person's term effectively does not end if they hold that position for longer than the 3-year period of time required by statute. So this basically cleans that up. It doesn't say you need to remove these individuals or they can't sit on that board continuous during their term of office or get reappointed, but it does give the township the opportunity to appoint other individuals or other employees or other individuals in the general public to this board in making those decisions and recommendations. The language also provides for the current members' terms to expire before they are subject to being either reappointed or a new member being appointed. Currently, the deputy clerk's term expires June 30th, 2022. The Parks and Rec department department head is June 30th, 2023, and the finance director's is June 30th, 2024. So this is not going to be an immediate change by any means, but going forward, it brings us more in line with what is provided for in state statute.
Thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. Any questions? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. What, in your opinion, was the reason for the mistake? Was it who wrote the Articles of Incorporation? In other words, did the state statute exist as it's written today back then?
I didn't see any amendments to that change. This would have been, I think, done in 1998 potentially. It was quite some time ago, and I can't speak to what the logic was or who may have made the decision. Obviously, it was adopted by the board back then, 1998 or something along those lines. But I did not see a change in the statute, and it was pretty clear, and that would be pretty typical. It's kind of, you kind of have an odd mixture of the positions that are incorporated in our Articles of Incorporation. And the one caveat I will say as well, and I think the amendment also indicates that none of you as members of the legislative body can sit on that board. And that's why it's specifically excluded, and that's provided for in the state statute as well.
One follow-up question. Are any of the actions by the building authority subject to attack for being unlawful or illegal?
I don't believe so. Trustee Guzmano.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I think the original building authority was created for this building, if I'm not mistaken.
It likely would have been, yes.
All right, any more questions? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion by Clerk Posey, supported by Treasurer Gillette, to amend the Macomb Township Building Authority's Articles of Incorporation, or to adopt a resolution to amend. Clerk Posey, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Clerk Posey, yes. Treasurer Drollet?
Yes.
Trustee Kuzma?
Yes.
Trustee Lucido?
Yes.
Trustee Oliver?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Supervisor Viviano?
Yes. You want to say it again? The resolution is adopted. All right, moving on to item 18 is a request for authorization to sell parcels 20-0805400029 and parcel 20-0822400041.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Support.
We'll get into some of the details on this. Ms. Solomon, would you review for us the process by which we acquired these buyers?
For both of these parcels, the parcels were listed for sale in Mitten on the township website and signs posted on the properties. For the 22 Mile Road property, we did receive 2 bids during the time that the offers were posted for sale. And we entered into an agreement with the highest bidder, with the understanding that we had board approval on authorizing us to sell these parcels. On the 25 Mile Road parcel, that bid was posted on Mitten. The bid had closed and it had no bids received. And since the parcel had not sold during the time that the solicitation was open for public bidding, we left the sign on the property because we wanted to make people passing by aware that that was still a parcel that was for sale. So 2 weeks after the bid had closed, I received a phone call with an inquiry on that particular parcel. So I emailed over the documents that were posted in Mitten, and a few days later, that interested party did submit the signed agreement that they signed on for them, along with the deposit. And so we followed the purchasing process, and once a parcel has been offered for sale to the public, if it's left unsold, the purchasing process does allow us to sell it in any manner that's in the best interest of the township. Now, when we had originally had that parcel unsold and the sign was still out, I anticipated that we would be using the broker that we approved at last meeting to have them list and sell the property, since we were not able to do that on our own. But, fortunately, someone came forward and was interested. And that's how we went
So
through
thank
that
you, Ms.
process.
Solomon. So just to be clear, every part of that process was part of the purchasing policy as it currently is stated, correct?
Yes, it was. We followed the process, or
Okay.
followed the policy without exception.
Thank you. So I provided a rather detailed board memo to my colleagues here to kind of explain how we ended up with this request tonight. I do want to assure the general public, as I just stated, that the purchasing policy was followed to a T. These 2 potential buyers of these properties were acquired in a manner that is open and transparent. Everybody had the same opportunity to bid on Mitten for these 2 parcels. Everybody had the same opportunity to put in an offer once the bid had expired on the 25-mile piece. Not only were they advertised on Mitten, I asked the purchasing specialist to post signs for them down on the main floor of Town Hall, so that anybody coming in and out would also see them. So we kept a very rigid application to the purchasing policy. Where things got complicated, where in the preparation for closing on these properties, we were pulling together our paperwork, it came to my attention that we couldn't locate the board authorization that we were under the impression that existed. In 2018, the township attorney at the time began making preparations to sell these properties. Many department heads have confirmed that with me. They remember him coming to them, making inquiries. In fact, the appraisal that exists on the 22 Mile Road piece is there because he ordered it, and it was in preparation to sell it. So all of us, acting on good faith, believe that there was a board vote that authorized the township supervisor to sell these properties. And in my memo, I state that the previous board didn't actually vote to authorize their sale. We actually found the details today. So on March 14th, there was a closed session that I have a copy of the minutes finally from the meeting. So the item was for consideration for the purchase of real property prior to obtaining the option for that real property closed session per MCL 15-268. My understanding is the attorney at the time preferred things to be kept very vague and used that MCL statute to pull the board into closed session, even when he was referring to selling of properties, which is why the item is stated that way. They came out of closed session. The simple vote at that time was to authorize legal counsel to proceed as discussed. That is not adequate for the title company. So tonight, I am coming before the board and my colleagues to confirm that I have the authorization to sell both of these parcels.
Mr. Supervisor, may I add something?
Yes.
Based upon that explanation, can I suggest that we break these down into two separate motions because you have two separate parcels that we're dealing with? My suggestion, just because I know how finicky the title companies can be about the specific authorization, I think it would behoove us if we do two separate motions. I would suggest a motion for the first the property to confirm the supervisor's authorization to sell parcel number 20-08-22-400-041 located on 22 Mile Road, and authorize the supervisor to accept the bid of $311,000 and to work with the township attorney to close the sale. And then I would do the same language for the second parcel and act on each of those motions individually so it's clear to the title company what your specific authorization is and what the board has granted you.
Okay, so before we entertain any more discussion.
Well, I'd just like to get clarification. So the title company does not accept the minutes from a number of years ago saying proceed as discussed.
Absolutely not. The title company is going to laugh in your face with that type of motion.
All right, so rather than authorizing the supervisor to proceed as generally discussed, I would make the motion to confirm the supervisor's authorization to sell parcel number 20-08-22-400-041 located on 22 Mile Road, and authorize the supervisor to accept the bid of $311,000 and to work with the township attorney to close the sale. So hopefully that will be clear for the title company and for anybody involved.
Why don't you add and execute any necessary documents?
And execute
Any necessary documents.
any necessary documents. I would add
Running
that
out
as
of,
well.
running
to the
out of
motion.
ink. Who was our second on that original motion?
Nobody. Or did you?
I think
Okay.
Peter, yes, it was Peter.
And I'll support that.
Yeah, support the amendment.
Yes.
Okay. So now on the amended motion, is there any questions from my colleagues or any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Through the chair to legal counsel, is there any exposure to the township if this board were to vote no?
Well, I believe the purchase agreement was executed based upon the belief that there was already authorization properly granted. There's obviously a written contract that potentially could lead the proposed purchaser to seek enforcement of that. Are there some potential defenses to that? I think so, but there's obviously potential exposure from a liability standpoint as far as challenging the authorization originally to sign the documents.
Thank you. I suppose, Mr. Chairman, that the question is whether the argument was made oh, I have one more question for legal counsel. It came up during the agency agreement for the real estate company or broker that it wasn't going to be exclusive. Are we obligated under that under that agreement, listing agreement, to list these properties with that?
I can speak to that, Mr. Trustee Cusmano. I spoke to the broker. He's aware of these two sales. He understands that they're not part of any agreement.
Okay.
And that agreement is only applicable in the event that we make the decision to go with a listing broker.
Correct. That
We could continue to post properties on Mitten or whatever other alternative, and if we're not successful, the broker's kind of our last resort, is the way I understand it.
Yeah, each property that would be given to the broker would have a unique, separate contract.
Correct.
It would be on a case-by-case basis.
That's correct.
So, Mr. Chairman, the only comment that I have is whether or not the board wants to gamble that perhaps they'll get more than the asking price or the negotiated price, plus the agent's premium. That would be distilling it down to the,
That would be something we discussed. Yes, that would be a gamble. We could end up in a worse position if we were to go back to the drawing board effectively. There's also a question of fairness to the potential buyers, that now that everybody knows what their offer and bid is, whether it's fair to them to go back out and allow people to overbid them possibly and take the property away, or if those were the only two bidders, they now could come in lower if they want to take that risk.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It seems as if the intention to sell parcels that our township has not been putting into public use has been a stated goal of this board since the new year, essentially.
It's been that way for several years.
Okay,
We're
and
actually doing it now.
we've been trying to move these forward, and we've posted them on Mitten. I know we've gone above and beyond posting on Mitten. We've posted signs at the building department. We've sent emails to all the people who request building permits in the township and that sort of thing, trying to encourage interest in the properties. It would seem that when people have then bid, granted not as many as we'd like, that we would not want to say, gotcha, there was a glitch from 8 years ago that wasn't clear to the title agency, so we're pulling, we're not going to go forward. We found a glitch and we're going to yank the deal because we might be able to post it again. I just think that doesn't look well for the township. This is not an error on the side of people bidding, and not an error on the side of the bidders, not really an error, and anybody's in good faith moving forward. It's a technical glitch that needs to be adjusted for, so we shouldn't take advantage of that to try to, punish people who've been involved in the process.
Thank you, Treasurer Gillette. And just so everyone understands, I'm accepting full responsibility for this error. And really the error is I didn't verify in writing that this vote had taken place, and I should have.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I was on the board at the time. I can honestly say, although the minutes are vague, it was as directed by Township Legal at the time. Those were the motions that were made, but I know for certainty that that was the spirit and intent of that particular motion that day, and that's what was discussed.
Thank you. Trustee Lucido?
Just a couple comments. Number one, my vote tonight is going to be based on the simple fact of I believe this oversight was in good faith. There is no good reason to go back to the drawing board and, as Trustee Cusimano pointed out, gamble on possibly getting a better offer, but possibly getting a lesser offer. Everybody had the appropriate time and opportunity to bid on these properties. Possible legal consequences, maybe not, but possible. There is no good reason to restart the process again. So my vote would be in favor of selling the properties.
Thank you, Trustee Lucido. Any further comment? Okay, we're going to vote on the first motion. We have a motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Lucido, to confirm the supervisor's authorization to sell parcels number 200822400041 located on 22 Mile Road, and authorize the supervisor to accept the bid of $311,000 and to work with the township attorney to close the sale and execute any necessary documents. Members, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. So, Mr. Care to make it the second motion?
Right, so I'll go ahead and make a motion to confirm the supervisor's authorization to sell parcel number 20080541 400-029, located on 25 Mile Road, and authorize the supervisor to accept the offer of $78,000 and to work with township attorney to close the sale and all the other stuff.
Execute any necessary
Execute
document.
Necessary documents.
Support.
Can't say that, Leon.
Amen. Is there a second?
Support.
Second.
All right, any discussion on the second motion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment. I think that it's unseemly for this board and members on it and the members of the audience to be laughing about former general counsel trying to skirt and fleet the Open Meetings Act in closed session. I know as a resident, before I got elected, I was calling to the board's attention certain backdoor, in my opinion, devices to go into a closed session and not conduct the public's business in public. I think it's important that we not minimize that malfeasance. And it doesn't affect my vote because I think that the appraisal of the value of this property or properties was fair and adequately done. There's a great deal of write-up and documentation in the board packet on it. So, but I take umbrage with this cavalier attitude about, not keeping proper minutes for closed sessions, and which, by the way, are not supposed to be disclosed under criminal penalty unless you have a court order. And you can ask general counsel about that. So I'll continue to raise my voice in opposition to what I consider to be violations of Open Meetings Act and other laws. And I know it wasn't this current board, but it really bothered me that there was laughter and humor being bandied about on that action by former legal counsel. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Kuzmano.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just want to be clear, there were no closed session meeting minutes exposed. It's just the language that was in the meeting. There was nothing exposed from closed session. Those minutes have been destroyed per the statute. So I didn't know if that's what you were referring to, if I misunderstood, but I just want to be clear, there wasn't anything that was
As I
disclosed.
understood it, the way that it took place was that there was a motion to dispose of the properties, and I'm paraphrasing, as discussed in closed session.
Correct. Vague. It was, that was the motion, yes. But I didn't expose any meeting minutes to him. That's just what was in the minutes.
I'm not accusing you of any wrongdoing. I just wanted to mention my knowledge on that subject matter, because I was a little bit taken aback I was asked questions of a client. I'm not going to mention who and in what context, but it deals with our favorite former legal counsel.
No, okay, so I just wanted to make sure, I didn't want you to think that I exposed anything, and I do, in all fairness, you have addressed me and asked how come when we come out of closed session that the motions are made that way, and that was under advisement of counsel.
Yes, I understand, and I want to make it clear for the record that I have not accused Clerk Posey or anyone on the dais of any misfeasance or malfeasance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kuzmano.
You're welcome.
Did you have something to add?
I was just going to add that obviously we want as much clarity and precision as possible when we come out of closed session regarding issues discussed, or it comes back to bite us as it did, today, years later, if it's unclear, if it's, it's been a number of years, and frankly, in this case, it was unclear to the title company that the authorization was precise enough. So I would agree that we want to make sure that that clarity is there for when we come out of any closed session, so that we don't repeat this, that some board in the future ends up in a similar quandary.
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion on the motion? Okay. All right, hearing none, we have a motion by Treasurer Gillette, supported by Trustee Nevers, to confirm the supervisor's authorization to sell parcel 200805400029 located on 25 Mile Road, and authorize the supervisor to accept the offer of $78,000 and to work with township attorney to close the sale and execute any necessary documents. Members, please vote. The motion passes unanimously. All right, moving on to public comment. This is for non-agenda items. If you have something you would like to address, please approach the microphone. You have a 3-minute time limit. Please state your name and address for the record, and if you are participating remotely, please digitally raise your hand and you will be called upon. Anyone who wishes to speak? No one present. Mr. Ivanowski, is there anybody on the?
No, sir, not at this time.
All right, we will move on from public comment. Board comments. Trustee Oliver, you always have something to say.
One thing tonight, charging stations with all the new vehicles coming out that are battery powered, do we have any intention, or are we looking into the cost of charging station, the viability of it, or?
Actually, a salesman for one of the charging station providers came to my office, I don't know, 3-4 months ago. Discussed us, gave me his pitch on pros and cons of having a charging station here at Town Hall. They are a little expensive. There are some grants available, but there's the grants that I'm aware of don't offset all of the cost. There'd still be a cost. It's something we'll continue to look at. We don't really have it in the budget right now, but obviously as more and more people get electric vehicles, it's something maybe we'll consider.
Okay. Maybe it's something that our grant people can look at too, along with you.
So we can.
All right, thank you. That's
Thank
it.
you. Trustee Kuzmano.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't plan on making any comments, but I want to just say that I'm not afraid of conducting the public's business in public. I am sure that every member of this board feels the same way after going through what we went through with the person who used to sit in this very chair. I often think I'm sitting in Dino Bucci's chair. I think secrecy breeds all manner of problems for government and a self-governing democracy the way that we have set up our affairs. Also, I'd like to inquire of the chair whether or not the water and sewer rates will be coming before the board at any time this year. It's usually in September. We did not actually, I wasn't on the board at the time, but I believe there wasn't a decision made in 2020 to raise the rates. And I'm wondering if that's going to come before the board and whether or not a committee can be formed to evaluate the negotiations with the Great Lakes Water Authority before Mr. Van Tifflin and Jerry Wagelin meet with the Great Lakes Water Authority. And from the minutes from previous sessions with them, I understand they're with an attorney and several other Scrivener and several engineers. So that's my question to the chair, if you want to answer it, or we can talk about it at some point in the future.
Well, I can answer it. At this time, we intend to come to the next board meeting with the water rates. There's going to be meetings called over the next, in-between periods where, I don't think we've set the exact schedule yet, but all of the board members are going to be invited to speak with our consultant about how the rates, our recommendation was arrived at. So we all have the same foundation to speak about them at the meeting. As far as when the time comes to renew the contract with Great Lakes Water Authority, I don't intend to leave Mr. Wanglin and Mr. Van Tifflin, to their own, and hang them out to dry, so to speak. I plan on being a part of those discussions, and, I don't even yet know the process going into that meeting, so that's something that I'll have to meet with them about and decide how that's going to go forward.
Well, Mr. Chairman, just to educate myself, and I know a little bit about it, the contract signed for a long period of time. The rates for the fiscal year is presented to the township. I want to know if that meeting has taken place or occurred, I guess through the chair.
For the current water rates, there was no meeting. They sent us a notice, yes.
They just sent the demand or the ask.
That is correct.
Okay.
right? That was,
The Great Lakes Water Authority has what they call their rate rollout programs. There are 4 meetings that happen where they explain how they came up with the numbers. But the individual rate that we get is officially mailed to the township, and that's what the supervisor is referring to. And that usually happens, and I think it's April or March. It's approved by the Great Lakes Water Authority Board, usually in February, and then it's sent out after that.
And could I get a copy of that, or is it, was there 4 meetings with the representatives of Macomb Township?
No, we basically what happens is they invite all of their customers to these meetings. They're virtual now, so we have them over Zoom.
Okay.
And so they explain, their capital improvement program, the cost of service, their basis for the rate, their cost versus, what they're, charging their customers. So all of that is done in 4 meetings. They're starting again for next year's rate, starting in November, and they last through the end of January, I believe. And then it's taken after that to the Water Authority Board, where they actually approve what the budget is for their rates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Trustee Lucido.
A couple of things. One more anecdotally on item 16, the cloud-based phone system. We're actually doing the same thing at my office. We figured that is obviously the best route to go as well, so I'm glad we're going that way here. On item 18, one comment and a question, actually. The comment would be, I actually want to commend the supervisor for his transparency on what happened with that situation. It could have gone south very easily, and I think bringing it to the forefront and telling everybody, hey, here's what happened, we can correct it, and we found a good solution, I think. But the question would be, going forward, is there any language maybe we can put in the purchase agreements that say, subject to board approval, so that, if we did ever get into some sort of a problem, we have a way out of basically saying, hey, it wasn't approved, this contract is null and void, so we don't get sued. Something like that, maybe for Mr. Tomlinson.
Well, I can answer that, actually, because Mr. Aloya was in the offices today, and we had that very discussion. All future purchase agreements signed by the township will include the language that they are subject to board approval.
Good.
So to make sure that we are doubly covered. And additionally, I will make sure that, before we initiate the process of selling any property, that I'm coming to the board each and every time and making, I don't believe any other properties were ever the subject of discussion, so it's sort of moot at this point. That was just that one circumstance for these last 2.
Got it. Thank you.
Trustee Nevers.
Yes. Actually, I'd like to take this opportunity to give a shout out to Dave Taylor and Jerry Van Hoyt. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. They're 2 of our ordinance officers working in the building department. And I'd like to explain. Upon a 3rd visit regarding a complaint of hoarding, garbage, and parked cars filled with junk and debris, they realized the homeowner was a 95-year-old man who was incapable of cleaning up his property and needed help. Rather than issuing additional violation notices or court appearance tickets, Dave and Jerry took the initiative and contacted the Macomb County senior citizens and secured help for this elderly resident. The MCSS employees will now provide the homeowner with the necessary cleanup of his property and with food assistance from Meals on Wheels. And I'd just like to publicly thank the 2 of them. They went the extra mile and made sure the elderly gentleman's garbage and debris was cleaned up and saw to it that he would have daily meals delivered. These are the kind of employees we board members are proud to have working in the township, and I'd like to take this time to publicly thank them.
Thank you, Trustee Nevers. Treasurer Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I concur with Trustee Nevers on the above and beyond nature of those employees who weren't just looking to, do their job. They were looking for a way to help the residents. Their jobs exist not just to perform some routine function, but to help the community, and they look for the best way to help the community in that circumstance. And so they deserve to be commended for finding that way to help that gentleman. I also like to just extend a little bit of thanks to our trustee, Charlie Oliver, who has very generously donated a bunch of pumpkins for the Halloween event for the Recreation Center for the kids. And so thank you for your donation of the pumpkins, and I'm sure it'll make it for a great Halloween event at the Parks and Recreation Center.
You're welcome.
That's all.
Okay, great. Clerk Posey.
I just wanted to give everybody an update. Sometimes there's some confusion when surrounding communities have elections and Macomb Township does not have one. So Macomb Township does not have an election in November. Yay. But other surrounding communities do. So we get a lot of phone calls wanting to know why they didn't get their ballot, why we removed them for the list. But we didn't do any of those things. We simply just don't have an election in November. And also, I'm looking forward to our Halloween event next Friday, hosted by our Parks and Rec Department for Halloween. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Clerk Posey. The Halloween event is sold out, unfortunately, but to all those who already purchased tickets, I'm sure it's going to be great, and I know the staff is looking forward to seeing everybody. I want to echo Trustee Nevers' comments to our code enforcement for doing a fantastic job of recognizing what really was taking place in that situation and going the extra mile to help our residents. And I want to say that while that circumstance was really, kind of heartwarming to hear, that actually it's very common for the staff here at Town Hall to take the time and go the extra mile for a lot of our residents. A lot of them, including a number of them in this room, have taken the time to deal with residents' particular needs, and I appreciate the care that we, give to our, to all of our residents. So thank you to everyone for continuing to do a great job. The last thing I want to mention is we are still continuing to gather the contact information for homeowners associations for any officer or president. So please continue to spread the word. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends in other communities. We would love to get that information so that we can call a town hall meeting with all of those officers and give them some information and see what we can do to help them and to help our community in general. So, that being said, we are currently seeking a ZBA alternate, Zoning Board of Appeals alternate. So if anyone who wishes to apply, the application for board positions is on the website. Please fill it out, and we'll be gathering those over the next few weeks until we can get a pool of candidates to choose from. So, if that's it, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, there's a motion by Clerk Posey, seconded by Treasurer Gillette to adjourn the meeting. Members, please vote.
Charlie, are you having technical difficulties? No?
I voted.
No, that was me, sorry.
Motion carries unanimously. Meeting is adjourned.